the silent stonemason of ancient Egypt. Thousands of years ago, when the first light of dawn spilled across the golden sands of Egypt, life moved to the rhythm of the eternal Nile. The river glistened like liquid silver, its slow currents whispering secrets of time. Along its fertile banks, fields of barley and wheat swayed gently in the morning breeze, while date palms cast long, wavering shadows over the still water. In those days, men built structures of such magnificence that they seemed touched by the gods. Pyramids rose like mountains from the desert, their sharp edges cutting into the sky. They were monuments to eternity, dreams of kings who wished to become immortal. Pharaohs envisioned their names echoing through endless ages. Priests spoke of divine order. Architects planned with precision. Scribes recorded everything. But this is the story of a man without a name, a silent, ordinary stonemason towards morning. Each morning, long before the horizon blushed with light, the stonemason stirred in his small mud brick hut. The air was cool, though not for long. Soon the desert sun would blaze, but for now a faint breeze crept in through the doorway, carrying the distant scent of the river and the soft sounds of waking life. He rose with the heaviness of a man who had done the same thing every day for years. There was no bed, only a woven mat on the hard floor. He splashed water from a clay jar onto his face, just enough to wipe away the dust of sleep. There was no luxury here, no comfort, only necessity. His breakfast, if one could call it that, was a small piece of dry bread, sometimes softened with a date or two when luck allowed. He chewed slowly, not for pleasure, but to make the meal last longer. Then, like so many others, he stepped outside and began the walk toward the quarry and the hammer. The quarry was a world of its own, a place of endless stone and ceaseless labor. When he arrived, the same faces greeted him each morning, men who, like him, had grown quiet over the years. There was little need for words. Their work spoke for them. The sound echoed across the barren landscape like a heartbeat. Dust rose with every strike, clinging to hair, to skin, to the folds of worn linen garments. The air smelled of stone and sweat, a dry, grinding scent that filled the nostrils and settled deep in the lungs. Hours passed this way, in rhythm with the tools. To cut a single block of stone was no small task. It took patience, strength, and endless repetition, striking the same point over and over until the rock yielded. There was no room for pride in this work. No block was his alone. No piece bore his mark. He shaped stone not for himself, but for a monument he would never climb, a tomb he would never see finished. Midday, under the burning sun. By midday, the desert sun blazed white and merciless. Even the wind from the Nile seemed to carry heat, like air drawn from a furnace. Shadows disappeared. The ground shimmered as if alive. The men stopped for a short rest, though there was little shade to be found. The stonemason sat on a block of half-cut limestone, unwrapped his small ration of bread, and ate in silence. Water was taken in small sips, never in gulps, for it was precious, more precious than gold to those who labored here. Sometimes he looked toward the horizon, where the pyramid slowly grew. At first, it had been nothing more than a base of stones, spread out like a square platform. But now, after years of toil, its sides had begun to climb toward the heavens. He watched it rise as he chewed his bread, though without wonder. To him, it was not a marvel. It was simply the thing that took his strength, day after day. Then the break ended, and the hammering began again. evening and the long walk home. As the day waned and the shadows grew long, the quarry fell silent at last. The tools were set aside. The men's faces were streaked with sweat and dust, their eyes heavy. Muscles ached, backs throbbed, hands were raw and blistered. The stonemason walked home with slow, deliberate steps. There was no laughter on this road, no songs, just the shuffle of sandals through sand and the quiet sighs of men who had given all their strength to stone. At home, his supper mirrored his breakfast: bread, water, sometimes dates if fortune allowed. There was little talk in the village. People rested, saved what little energy remained for another day. Then, as the last light faded, he lay once more on his mat and closed his eyes, knowing tomorrow would be the same. Years that became a lifetime. Time in Egypt flowed like the Nile, slow and unbroken. Days became weeks, weeks became months, months became years, seasons shifted, floods came and went. Yet the work never changed. The stonemason's body changed, though. His hands hardened into rough, calloused tools. His back bent from years of lifting, chiseling, and hauling. His hair, once black, now carried streaks of gray. But still he walked. The same road each morning. Still the hammers rang. Still the dust clung to his skin. And all the while the pyramid climbed higher, closer to the sky. People from distant lands came to marvel at it, to whisper of the greatness of the pharaoh who ordered its construction. But the stonemason did not marvel. His eyes were clouded with dust. To him, the pyramid was simply a mountain of stone that grew because he and others like him kept cutting, lifting, and setting. The final day, one morning many years later, the stonemason rose as always. But this time his body betrayed him. His hands trembled when he tried to lift his chisel. His breath came shallow and uneven. Yet still, out of habit more than strength, he made his way to the quarry. There, under the same sun that had risen for decades of his life, he tried to work one last stone. But his arms gave out, his knees buckled, and so, quietly, he sat down on the same block where he had rested so many noons and closed his eyes for the last time. No one spoke his name. No one carved it into stone. The foreman simply called for another man to take his place. Work, the silent legacy centuries past. Sandstorms swept across the desert, kingdoms rose and fell, and new cities grew from the dust of the old. The Nile kept flowing, slow and eternal, but the people along its banks changed. Their languages, their beliefs, even their gods faded into history. Time erased almost everything, but not the stones. The stones remained, silent, motionless, unyielding. No name was carved upon them. No inscription proclaimed, "This stone was shaped by my hands." Yet each stone bore the faint, invisible memory of countless hammer strikes, each one placed by a human hand, hands long turned to dust. This was the stonemason's legacy. He had no wealth to leave behind, no tomb engraved with his name. Yet through his labor he had shaped thousands of stones, and those stones had become the bones of eternity. As long as the pyramid stood, so too did the echo of his life. Today, when visitors stand before the pyramids, they gaze upward in awe and whisper, "What a marvel! What greatness!" But few, perhaps none, ask the deeper question, who carved these stones? Whose strength built this wonder, one block at a time? The stonemason left no words, no songs, no record of his existence. Yet he left something greater, a silent message, etched not in ink but in endurance. I was here. My breath lives in these stones. My hands shaped these edges. My life is built into these walls. And perhaps this is the truest kind of immortality. Not to be remembered by name, but to have one's work endure for thousands of years, long after the voices of kings have faded.